From Paycheck to Paycheck, Breaking the Cycle full audiobook. Chapter 1, The Illusion of Security. You have been told your whole life that a steady paycheck is the ultimate sign of security. From the time you were a child, adults repeated the same message. Study hard, get a good job, earn a stable salary, and everything will be fine. The ritual of waking up each morning, heading to work, and waiting for that direct deposit at the end of the week or the end of the month has been sold as the path to certainty. But deep inside, you may have already felt a tremor of doubt. You sense it when bills pile up before payday, when unexpected expenses crash into your carefully balanced budget, when layoffs are announced in hushed tones at the office. That so-called security begins to look more like a fragile rope bridge swaying in the wind, one that could snap at any moment. Imagine a man named David. He works diligently at a manufacturing plant, earning what many would call a respectable income. Every 2 weeks, his paycheck arrives, $2,600 after taxes. He feels relief when he sees a deposit in his account, but relief lasts only for a moment. The rent swallows $1,000, the car payment takes $350, groceries claim another $500, and utilities grab $200. By the time he pays a minimum on his credit cards and sets aside money for gas, he has almost nothing left. David goes to sleep each night believing that because he has a paycheck, he has security. But one look at the numbers reveals the truth. One missed paycheck would collapse his entire world. The illusion of security is powerful because it is invisible. It does not scream at you, it whispers in comfort. The predictable rhythm of payday calms your fears and makes you believe tomorrow will mirror today. You fall into routine, buying lunch at the same cafe, paying subscriptions that silently drain your account, convincing yourself that next month you will save more. Yet the system is designed to keep you chained. Employers promise stability. Banks encourage debt. Society praises consistency. It feels good to belong to the crowd that says, at least I know my check is coming. But what you really know is that you are trapped in a cycle where someone else dictates when you eat, when you pay bills, when you can exhale. Think of another story, this time of Maria, a schoolteacher who devoted her life to her students. She loved her job, but her salary was capped at $3,100 a month. For years, she convinced herself that steady pay meant safety. Then one year, unexpected medical expenses arrived. Her daughter broke her arm, and even with insurance, the out-of-pocket cost reached $7,000. Maria had no savings. She relied on credit cards, and within months, interest charges devoured her paycheck, like wildfire racing through dry fields. That was the day she understood the paycheck was not a shield but a thin veil, unable to withstand even a single storm. When you rely entirely on a paycheck, you build your life on shifting sand. If the company downsizes, if the economy contracts, if your health falters, everything collapses. You may believe that loyalty to your employer will protect you, but history tells another story. In 2008, millions of loyal employees lost jobs overnight. In 2020, countless workers discovered that businesses can close their doors in a heartbeat, leaving them with no income, no cushion, and no plan. The paycheck is never truly yours until it lands in your account, and even then it leaves almost as quickly as it arrives. The illusion persists because of the psychology of comfort. You measure your life not by wealth accumulated, but by money earned and spent. You may even mock those who take risks, telling yourself you prefer stability. But what is stability if it vanishes the moment the paycheck stops? You are not safe. You are merely pacified. Just as a child clings to a toy for comfort, adults cling to the paycheck. Both provide the feeling of safety without the substance of it. Numbers never lie. Consider this. If you earn $3,000 a month and your expenses equal that amount, your net security is zero. Even if you earn $6,000 but spend $5,900, your real safety net is $100, hardly more than a bandage on a gaping wound. Security does not come from the size of the paycheck, but from what you do with it. Yet countless people live as though the number on their pay stub is proof of safety. They confuse income with security, ignoring that true protection lies in assets, reserves, and independence. I remember meeting a young couple, James and Evelyn, who both worked in healthcare. Their combined income was nearly $8,000 per month, which seemed impressive compared to their peers. They bought a house with a mortgage of $2,000, leased 2 cars for a combined payment of $800, enrolled their children in private school at $1,500, and filled the rest with lifestyle upgrades, restaurants, streaming subscriptions, vacations on credit. When the hospital where James worked reduced staff, their income fell by half. Within 3 months, they were drowning. Their so-called security had been a mirage. All the while, their neighbors assumed they were wealthy because they drove new cars. But behind the closed doors, bills piled on the kitchen table like a fortress of paper, reminding them every day that the paycheck had never been safety at all. The illusion of security is not merely financial. It is emotional. You feel calmer when you know money is coming, even if it is already spoken for. Your mind relaxes at the idea of a predictable schedule. You tell yourself you can endure another month, another year, another decade, because at least you know what is coming. But ask yourself, do you truly know? Or are you ignoring the fragility of that system? Real security is not built on predictability alone. It is built on control. And when your life is tethered to a paycheck, control is the one thing you do not have. The cycle of dependence continues because people are afraid to question it. To acknowledge that the paycheck is not security is terrifying. It means you must face the possibility that you are more vulnerable than you believed. Yet freedom always begins with truth. Just as a patient cannot heal until a doctor names the illness, you cannot break free until you admit the paycheck is not the cure, but the symptom. The paycheck is a tool, not a guarantee. Used wisely, it can build a bridge toward freedom. Used carelessly, it becomes a leash. So you must decide whether to continue living under the illusion. You can close your eyes and hope your job lasts forever, or you can confront the uncomfortable truth that nothing is guaranteed. Once you see through the illusion, you gain power. You begin to understand that real security comes not from waiting for payday, but from building structures that outlast it. This recognition may sting, but it is the beginning of liberation. The first step to breaking the cycle is to admit the paycheck is not your anchor. It is your cage. The truth about the paycheck is that it often blinds you to the fragility of your position. You cling to it like a sailor clutching driftwood in stormy seas, convinced it will keep you afloat. Yet the waves grow stronger, the water colder, and the driftwood weaker with every passing year. You convince yourself that as long as payday arrives, everything else will somehow fall into place. But that illusion is shattered the moment you calculate how much of your life is already mortgaged to the next check. Rent, mortgage, insurance, utilities, food, transport, debt repayments. They all line up like open mouths, waiting to swallow your income whole the second it appears. What is left after they feed? Often nothing but a whisper of relief that quickly fades, replaced by the gnawing fear that you are always one step away from disaster. Think of Michael, a diligent worker who has been with the same company for more than a decade. His friends envy his stability, his steady paycheck, his predictable routine. But hidden behind the surface is a different story. Michael earns $4,000 per month. His mortgage payment is $1,500, car loans $800, and household bills another $1,000. Credit cards take $400, leaving him with $300 at the end of the month. For 10 years, he has lived with this razor-thin margin. He tells himself he is safe because the paycheck keeps arriving. But if that paycheck were to stop for even 1 month, he would face foreclosure, repossession, and bankruptcy. His apparent stability is nothing more than a house of cards balanced delicately on the promise of tomorrow. This illusion is so widespread that entire societies are built upon it. Politicians promise to protect jobs. Companies brand themselves as families, and banks encourage you to borrow against your future. Each message reinforces the idea that your paycheck is a shield, when in truth it is only a tether. It binds you to a system where you trade time for money and call it security. But true security would mean that you could stop working for a month, 3 months, or even a year without collapsing. It would mean that your financial well-being is not dependent on a single employer's decision. Most people do not have that luxury. They live hand to mouth, cycle to cycle, pretending the chains that bind them are a safety net. Consider a young woman named Clara. She is 29, employed in an advertising firm, and proud of her achievements. Her salary is $3,600 per month, and she has no children, no mortgage, only student loans and rent. On paper, it looks manageable. Yet every month she spends nearly all of it. $900 on rent, $400 on loans, $500 on groceries, and another $1,000 on lifestyle, clothes, restaurants, travel. What remains disappears in small, untracked purchases. She reassures herself that she is doing fine because the paycheck resets everything. But one medical emergency, one job layoff, one landlord raising the rent would tip her over the edge. Clara confuses routine with resilience. But resilience does not exist without margin. The paycheck illusion also plays tricks on your sense of identity. When you equate your worth with your ability to earn consistently, you measure yourself not by who you are, but by what flows into your bank account on payday. You may even take pride in the size of your paycheck, using it as proof of achievement, even when little of it stays with you. In conversations, people often ask, "What do you do?" rather than, "Who are you?" The answer they expect is tied directly to the paycheck. You might say, "I am an engineer, a teacher, a nurse, a manager." Rarely do people answer, "I am free, I am secure, I am in control of my financial destiny." And yet, that is the identity worth striving for. In 1999, during the dot-com bubble, countless workers believed they had lifetime security. Their companies issued steady paychecks, bonuses, even stock options. They bought houses, cars, and filled their lives with debt, confident that the wave would never end. But when the bubble burst, millions were left without jobs, without savings, and with debt that did not disappear when the paycheck did. It was a harsh reminder that no matter how promising a company may appear, no paycheck is immune to collapse. 2 decades later, during the pandemic of 2020, history repeated itself. Businesses shut down overnight, entire industries froze, and the illusion of security dissolved once more. The paycheck is fragile because it depends not only on you, but on an entire chain of circumstances beyond your control. The story of Daniel and Ruth makes this even clearer. Daniel worked as a mechanic, Ruth as a nurse. Together they earned around $7,000 a month, enough to maintain a comfortable suburban life. They had 2 cars, a spacious home, and annual vacations that filled their photo albums with memories. But their spending matched their income almost perfectly. When Daniel suffered an accident and could not work for 6 months, their world tilted. Ruth's income alone could not cover their obligations. They borrowed against their home, maxed out credit cards, and prayed for relief. When Daniel returned to work, they were drowning in debt that took years to repay. Their situation was not the result of laziness or carelessness. It was a consequence of believing the paycheck would always be there, strong enough to support their lifestyle. You may believe your case is different. Perhaps you have seniority at your company, or you have specialized skills, or you believe your industry is safe. But look at history again and again. No industry is immune. Automakers, airlines, tech companies, retail giants, all have laid off workers who thought they were irreplaceable. No paycheck is safe from disruption. The illusion persists only as long as you refuse to see the evidence. The first crack in the illusion appears when you finally calculate your dependency. Ask yourself, how long could you survive if your paycheck stopped today? 1 week? 1 month? 6 months? The answer is often sobering. Studies show the majority of people could not cover even 3 months of expenses without income. Many could not cover a single month. This is not security. It is vulnerability disguised as safety. And until you face it, you cannot change it. To break free, you must dismantle the story you were told. The paycheck is not the goal, not the proof of success, not the guarantee of safety. It is merely one stream of income, often the weakest and most fragile because it depends entirely on someone else's decision to employ you. Recognizing this truth is not meant to fill you with fear, but to awaken you. When you see the paycheck clearly, without illusion, you can begin to build something stronger. You can start to imagine a life where your survival does not hinge on the mercy of a single employer. The illusion of security falls apart when you shine the light of truth on it. That collapse, though frightening, is necessary, because only when the illusion crumbles can you begin the real work of constructing freedom. Chapter 2. The Hidden Cost of Living on the Edge. You think you are just getting by, carefully balancing your paycheck against the endless stream of bills. You convince yourself that the numbers almost line up, that you are in control because you manage to pay everything on time. But hidden beneath that surface is a quiet thief. The thief does not knock loudly at your door. It slips through cracks and shadows, draining your wealth without you even noticing. These are the hidden costs of living paycheck to paycheck, the silent burdens that keep you trapped in survival mode. They are not only the obvious debts, but also the subtle leaks, fees, interest, missed opportunities, and emotional tolls that accumulate until your financial future is chained to present. Picture a man named Robert. His paycheck is $2,800 each month, and his bills nearly match that amount. He feels relief every time he covers his rent, his car loan, and electricity bill. But Robert never notices the hidden costs. Last year, he paid nearly $400 in overdraft fees alone because his balance dipped below zero multiple times. The bank did not care that his check was deposited one day late, or that his bill came due one day early. Each fee was a brick in a wall that kept him from saving. In 12 months, those small penalties equaled almost 2 weeks of his hard-earned labor. Robert never thought about how many hours of his life he worked just to pay the bank for mistakes born from thin margins. Interest is another hidden cost, one that eats silently. Maria, whom we met before, relied on credit cards to cover emergencies. Her balance of $5,000 and interest rate of 18% meant she paid around $75 each month in interest alone. Over a year, that was $900, money she could have invested, saved, or used to reduce her debt. Instead, it vanished into the coffers of the credit card company. For every person living paycheck to paycheck, interest becomes a tax on poverty, punishing those who have the least cushion and rewarding those who already have reserves. The hidden costs are not just financial, they are psychological. Living on the edge forces you to make short-term choices that sabotage your future. Imagine standing in a grocery store with only $50 to last until payday. You see 2 options: fresh produce and healthy meals that may stretch a week but require preparation, or instant processed foods that fill your stomach now but damage your health long-term. The stress of scarcity often pushes you toward the quicker, cheaper option. Over years, those decisions accumulate into medical bills, lower energy, reduced productivity. Scarcity thinking does not only cost money, it costs health, energy, and life expectancy. Another story illustrates this point clearly. Angela, a single mother of 2, works as a cashier. Her monthly income is $2,000, and every penny has a destination before it even arrives. One month, her car breaks down. Without savings, she has no choice but to take a payday loan of $500. The interest is crushing, nearly $100 for just 2 weeks. She pays it, then rolls over another loan to cover the shortfall. Within 6 months, that single emergency has ballooned into $2,000 of debt. Angela is not irresponsible. She is trapped by the hidden costs of desperation. Living on the edge means every setback multiplies, and each dollar borrowed becomes 5 by the time it is repaid. The costs also show themselves in lost opportunities. When you are living paycheck to paycheck, you cannot take advantage of discounts, investments, or chances to grow. Think about something as simple as rent. Many landlords offer a discount for paying a year in advance, perhaps saving $500. But who can do that when they are barely scraping together the monthly amount? Or imagine an investment opportunity that requires $2,000 up front and promises a safe return of 10%. For those with reserves, that is an easy decision. For those in the cycle, it is impossible. The opportunity passes, and with it passes a chance to grow beyond survival. The rich grow richer not only because they earn more, but because they can seize opportunities that the paycheck-to-paycheck crowd cannot. Even daily convenience carries hidden costs. Ordering takeout, buying in small quantities, paying monthly instead of annually, all cost more in the long run. A family living in scarcity might buy a half gallon of milk for $3 rather than the bulk gallon for $5, even though the larger size saves money over time. But they cannot spare the extra $2 today, so they pay more tomorrow. Over a year, these small losses add up to hundreds, sometimes thousands of wasted dollars. It is not lack of knowledge, but lack of margin that creates the cycle. Let us not forget the emotional price. Living on the edge breeds constant stress, and stress itself is costly. It damages health, leading to medical expenses, It reduces focus, leading to mistakes at work. It erodes relationships, leading to conflicts that spill into every area of life. You cannot place a dollar figure on the anxiety of lying awake at night, wondering if you will make rent, but that toll is real. Studies have shown that chronic financial stress can lower cognitive ability, as if the brain is so consumed with survival that it cannot plan for the future. This is the cruelest hidden cost. The paycheck-to-paycheck cycle not only steals money, but also steals the ability to think clearly about how to escape. You may look at your own life and see only the surface: bills paid, lights still on, food still in the fridge. But beneath that surface, hidden costs multiply. They are the reason that, despite years of work, your savings account remains empty. They are why you feel as though you are running in place, expending energy without progress. The edge is not neutral ground. It is dangerous terrain that charges you rent for standing still. Every overdraft, every late fee, every impulse purchase born of exhaustion adds weight to the cycle you are trying to escape. The tragedy is that most people never calculate the true cost. They do not add up the fees in the last 5 years, the interest paid over the last decade, the opportunities missed, the health bills incurred from stress and poor diet. If they did, they would see that the cost of living on the edge is not simply financial. It is life itself, traded away one hidden expense at a time. The harshest truth about the hidden costs of living on the edge is that they are designed to compound. What begins as a single late fee transforms into a mountain of obligations. The system itself is built to reward those with margin and punish those without it. If you have wealth, you are offered lower interest rates, better payment terms, and exclusive opportunities. If you have nothing, you are charged higher rates, forced into unfavorable contracts, and made to pay more for the same necessities. It is a cycle that extracts from the poor to enrich the powerful. When you live paycheck to paycheck, you pay more for everything. More for credit, more for food, more for shelter, more for time. Consider the story of Anthony, who leased a modest car because he did not have enough saved to purchase one outright. His monthly payment was $450, and by the end of the lease, he had paid more than $16,000 for a car worth barely half that amount. If he had been able to buy used with cash, he could have spent $7,000 and been free. But living on the edge robbed him of that choice. He paid more for less, not because of ignorance, but because of lack of margin. The same logic applies to rent versus ownership. Families stuck in the paycheck cycle often rent for decades, paying landlords far more than the cost of mortgage, yet never building equity of their own. Think about the furniture and electronic stores that advertise no payments for 12 months. They target people without reserves, promising convenience today while concealing the ballooning interest tomorrow. A family that buys $2,000 worth of furniture this way might end up paying $3,000 by the time hidden fees and delayed interest accumulate. Had they waited and saved, they could have purchased the same items outright. But the urgency of living on the edge leaves no room for patience. Scarcity pushes you to choose immediate relief over long-term sense, and the merchants profit from that desperation. The psychological toll amplifies the financial cost. Living in constant scarcity creates a scarcity mindset. When your brain is trained to survive today, it cannot plan for tomorrow. Imagine a farmer who eats all his seeds each season because he is too hungry to save them. He satisfies the moment but ensures starvation in the future. The same happens when you live paycheck to paycheck. You spend everything you earn, not out of greed but out of necessity, and as a result, you cannot plant the seeds of wealth. Scarcity thinking becomes a prison where even opportunities to escape are overlooked. Rachel's story is a painful example. She was offered a position at a new company that required relocating and a 3-month waiting period before benefits kicked in. The salary was nearly double her current pay, but she could not accept. Why? Because she had no savings to survive those 3 months without medical coverage and reserves. Living paycheck to paycheck robbed her the chance to change her life. Instead, she remained in her underpaid job, trapped not by lack of talent but by lack of margin. This is a hidden cost few calculate. The cost of lost potential. Health is another casualty. Living on the edge makes you vulnerable to illnesses you cannot afford to treat. People skip doctor visits because copays are too high, delay dental work until infections spread, And avoid preventive care because insurance deductibles feel impossible. In the long run, these decisions become more expensive. Treating a small cavity might cost $100, but waiting until it becomes a root canal can cost $2,000. The inability to address issues early ensures that every problem becomes larger, more painful, and more expensive. Living paycheck to paycheck turns small cracks into fractures because you cannot act when action is cheapest. There is also the hidden cost of time. Without margin, you trade hours for survival. You wait in long lines for discounted groceries, drive across town to save a few cents on gas, and spend weekends filling out paperwork for assistance programs. Meanwhile, those with reserves buy back their time. They order in bulk, hire help, automate bills. They invest their time in growth while you expend yours in survival. Over years, this imbalance compounds until the wealthy accumulate not just money but entire lifetimes of extra hours. Time they can spend on learning, building, resting, creating. Time, once lost, cannot be repurchased. And yet the paycheck-to-paycheck life sells it cheap. Think of Marcus, who worked 2 jobs to stay afloat. He left home at 6 in the morning and returned at midnight, 6 days a week. His children grew up with little of his presence, and though he told himself he was working to give them a better life, what they remembered most was his absence. The hidden cost here was not measured in dollars, but in missed birthdays, unshared dinners, unspoken words. The paycheck kept the lights on, but the cost was love, time, and connection. Currency is more valuable than money itself. Every hidden cost has this compounding nature. Overdraft fees lead to higher balances, which lead to more overdraft fees. Payday loans lead to new loans. Missed opportunities today become lost wealth tomorrow. Stress leads to poor health, which leads to higher expenses. Lost time leads to lost memories, which can never be restored. The paycheck keeps you running, but the track is tilted, always pulling you downward, and the faster you run, the more energy you expend without advancing. To recognize these hidden costs is painful, because it means admitting you have been bleeding wealth and time for years without noticing. But awareness is the first step. Once you see the leaks, you can begin to plug them. Once you identify the thieves, you can guard against them. The tragedy is not that hidden costs exist. They exist for everyone. The tragedy is that those living paycheck to paycheck can least afford them, yet they pay them most heavily. Until you confront this truth, you will continue to work harder and harder only to fall further behind. The edge charges rent for every breath you take. It demands interest for every mistake. It exacts payment for every opportunity you cannot seize. Living this way is not free. It is the most expensive way to live. And until you understand that, you will continue to confuse survival with progress, unaware that the cycle feeds itself on your struggle. Chapter 3, The Power of Awareness. There comes a moment when you finally stop running long enough to look around and realize you are standing still. That realization can feel like a punch in the chest. You see the endless motion of working, spending, borrowing, repaying, yet none of it moves you forward. Awareness is not glamorous. It does not appear as a miracle or a sudden windfall. Instead, it arrives quietly, like the sun breaking through clouds after storm. When you become aware of your financial reality, not the story you tell yourself, not the comforting illusions, but the actual numbers, you gain power. Awareness is the crack that lets the light of change enter. Most people avoid awareness because it feels uncomfortable. They would rather not open their bank statements or look closely at receipts. They prefer the comfort of denial, the soft fog that blurs the harsh edges of reality. But denial is expensive. It allows leaks to continue draining your resources. Like a hole in the roof, ignored until the entire structure collapses. Awareness is the opposite. It shines a spotlight on the leaks, the cracks, the hidden costs. At first, it stings, but in time it heals. You cannot fix what you refuse to see. Imagine Sarah, a nurse in her mid-30s. She always believed she was doing fine because her bills were paid, and she never missed a credit card payment. But one night, unable to sleep, she decided to write down every expense from the last month. Rent, $1,200. Car payment, $400. Student loans, $250. Groceries, $600. Eating out, $300. Streaming subscriptions, $100. Coffee shop visits, another $120. At the end of her list, the total shocked her. $3,000, nearly her entire income. She realized that she was spending more than she thought, not because of one major mistake, but because of 100 small ones. That night, Sarah's awareness was born. She could not unsee the truth. She could no longer tell herself the story that everything was fine. Awareness does not only reveal spending, it reveals patterns. When you track your expenses, you start to see habits you never noticed. Maybe every Friday you order takeout out of exhaustion. Maybe every morning you buy coffee on the way to work. Maybe every few weeks you scroll through online shops, filling your cart with things you do not need. Each pattern, once invisible, becomes clear under the light of awareness, and with clarity comes choice. You may still choose to buy coffee, but now you know what it costs, not just in dollars, but in hours of your labor. If you earn $20 an hour after taxes, that $5 coffee represents 15 minutes of your life. Awareness reframes money into time, and suddenly every purchase carries weight. A powerful example comes from John and Lisa, a married couple with 2 children. For years, they fought about money. John accused Lisa of overspending. Lisa accused John of being controlling. One day, tired of the arguments, they sat down together with every bill, statement, and receipt from the past 6 months. They categorized every expense and discovered something shocking. They had spent over $8,000 in that period on dining out. Neither had realized how much those little meals had added up. That moment of awareness changed their marriage. It was no longer about blame. It was about choice. They decided together to limit dining out to once a week, and in the following year, they redirected $6,000 into savings. Without awareness, they would still be arguing in circles. With awareness, they found a path forward. Awareness also extends beyond numbers to emotions. You begin to notice how you feel when you spend. Do you shop when you are stressed? Do you eat out when you're lonely? Do you buy gadgets when you're bored? Awareness reveals that spending is often less about need and more about emotion. Once you recognize the triggers, you can address them without draining your account. Instead of buying to soothe anxiety, you might exercise, call a friend, or journal. The awareness of emotional spending frees you from being manipulated by your own moods. Consider David, who worked long hours at a law firm. Every Friday evening, exhausted and drained, he would stop at the mall and buy something new: shoes, shirts, electronics. He told himself he deserved it after a hard week. But when he finally looked at his credit card statements over a full year, he saw that these small rewards had cost him more than $7,000. That awareness shook him. He realized he had been paying thousands of dollars to medicate his exhaustion with purchases that never truly satisfied him. With awareness, he chose a new ritual. On Fridays, instead of shopping, he treated himself to a walk in the park and dinner with his family. The satisfaction was deeper and the financial savings immense. Awareness is also about understanding opportunity cost. Every dollar you spend today is a dollar you cannot invest for tomorrow. If you spend $100 a month on subscriptions, that is $1,200 a year. If invested at even a modest return of 6% annually over 20 years, that money could grow to more than $40,000. Awareness reframes the choice. Is this subscription worth $40,000 of my future? When you see money not just as present value, but as future potential, your decisions change. Awareness is the bridge between present comfort and future freedom. There's a story of Carlos, who worked as a mechanic earning $3,000 a month. For years, he believed he was too poor to invest. Then one financial coach showed him the math. If he saved $200 each month and invested it consistently, in 30 years, he could have over $200,000. That moment of awareness stunned him. He realized that the small sacrifices he dismissed as meaningless were, in fact, powerful seeds. He did not need to be rich to begin. He only needed to be aware. Awareness is not about judgment or shame. It is about clarity. You cannot build wealth in the dark. You cannot break cycles while blindfolded. When you choose awareness, you turn on the light in the room where your money lives. At first, the mess may overwhelm you, but with time, you begin to clean, organize, and take control. Awareness does not solve every problem instantly, but it is the first step in solving any of them. Awareness is power because it restores agency. Instead of money controlling you, you begin to control money. Instead of bills dictating your life, you begin to dictate your priorities. The paycheck-to-paycheck cycle thrives on blindness, on people drifting without clarity. But the moment you open your eyes, you weaken the cycle. And that first glimpse of truth, though uncomfortable, becomes a seed of transformation. Awareness deepens when you begin to see not only your spending, but also the systems that surround you. The paycheck-to-paycheck cycle is not just about your choices. It is about the structures built to profit from your lack of clarity. Credit card companies thrive when you do not read the fine print. Banks rely on you not noticing the small fees buried in statements. Employers benefit when you are too busy or exhausted to calculate the true value of your labor. Awareness, therefore, is not only personal but also systemic. It allows you to see the ways the world is designed to keep you blind. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Take the story of Henry, a warehouse worker earning $3,200 a month. For years, he assumed the company's health plan was decent because they deducted only $200 from his paycheck. But one day, he took the time to study the paperwork. He discovered that his deductible was so high, $5,000, that the plan protected him from almost nothing. In effect, he had been paying thousands each year for the illusion of coverage. That awareness pushed him to research alternatives, and he eventually found a better plan through a union cooperative. Nothing about his situation changed until he opened his eyes and examined what was always there. Awareness saved him thousands of dollars and gave him peace of mind. Awareness is also about time. You often fail to notice how much of your life is consumed by the cycle. Count the hours spent worrying about bills, the late nights spent calculating which payments can wait, the extra shifts taken to cover shortfalls. If you were to assign a dollar value to the time you spend managing scarcity, you would see that poverty taxes not just your wallet, but your hours. When you live paycheck to paycheck, your calendar is filled not with growth, but with survival. Awareness forces you to measure time as the precious currency it is. Consider the case of Linda, who worked as a personal assistant. She earned $2,500 a month and lived alone. Every time her account balance neared zero, she spent hours moving money between checking and savings, calling the bank to request extensions, and juggling credit card limits. One day she sat down and calculated. She had spent over 50 hours in a single year just managing financial stress. 50 hours, more than a full work week, loss of scarcity. That awareness stunned her. She realized that if she had redirected even half that time into learning a new skill or freelancing, she could have earned extra income instead of wasting her energy patching holes. Awareness reframed not just her money, but her time. Another layer of awareness is comparison, not with others, but with yourself. Track where you were 5 years ago and compare it to today. Have you built reserves, or are you still in the same place? Without awareness, 5 years pass in a blur of paychecks and bills, and you wake up realizing nothing has changed. With awareness, you can measure progress and adjust your path. Progress is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is a slow accumulation of small wins. Paying off a credit card, saving 1 month's expenses, investing the first $1,000. Without awareness, you dismiss these victories as insignificant. With awareness, you recognize them as milestones on a road to freedom. Let us look at a vivid example. In 2012, Marcus was drowning in debt, living paycheck to paycheck with no savings. He decided to track every dollar for a year, writing it down in a notebook. At first, it was exhausting, but by the end of that year, he saw that he had spent over $3,000 on fast food. $3,000, money that could have built an emergency fund. With that awareness, he changed his habits, cut his fast food spending in half, and by 2015, he had saved $10,000. His income had not changed significantly, but his awareness had transformed his future. Awareness also reveals the emotional lies you tell yourself. How many times have you said, "I deserve this," while swiping credit card? How many times have you promised yourself you would save next month, only to repeat the same cycle? Awareness strips away those justifications. It forces you to admit that your emotions, not your needs, drive many of your decisions. This is not about guilt. It is about clarity. When you know why you spend, you can choose differently. Without awareness, Your emotions pilot the ship. With awareness, you take the wheel. Think of Ethan, a young professional who earned $4,000 a month. Every bonus check he received disappeared within weeks. He told himself he deserved to celebrate after working so hard. But one day he reviewed 5 years of tax documents and realized that his bonuses had totaled nearly $20,000. He could not point to a single lasting thing that money had given him. That awareness was crushing, yet it was also freeing. For the first time, he could not hide behind excuses. He decided to direct his next bonus into an investment account, and within 2 years he saw it grow into something tangible. Awareness had turned fleeting pleasures into lasting value. Awareness is a mirror. Sometimes it shows you things you do not want to see, the wasted money, the missed opportunities, the habits that betray your future. But that mirror is also your greatest gift. When you look directly at your reflection, you can finally decide to change. Without awareness, you drift, pushed by winds you cannot control. With awareness, you plant your feet firmly on the ground and begin to walk with intention. The cycle of paychecks thrives on blindness. Bills arrive, you pay them, and you move on without ever asking, where did my money go? What could I have done differently? What do I want my money to do for me? Awareness is the act of asking those questions. It is a decision to stop being a passenger in your financial life and become the driver. And while it may not give you all the answers immediately, it gives you the clarity to seek them. Awareness alone does not create wealth, but without it, wealth is impossible. It is the foundation, the first crack in the walls of the paycheck prison. Once you are aware, you can no longer live the same way. You begin to see not only the trap, but also the door. And with every moment of clarity, you move closer to turning the handle and stepping into a life where money serves you instead of enslaving you. Chapter 4. Building a Foundation of Freedom. Freedom is not an accident. It is not something that falls into your lap one day because you wish for it. Freedom is built, brick by brick, with choices that seem small in the moment but compound into something powerful over time. When you have spent years trapped in the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle, the very idea of freedom may feel distant, almost mythical, like a story told about other people but never meant for you. Yet the foundation of freedom begins the same way for everyone, with preparation. You do not leap from survival to abundance in one motion. You first build a platform strong enough to support you when the storms arrive. The most important part of that platform is an emergency fund. Without it, you will always be at the mercy of the next crisis. A broken refrigerator, a flat tire, an unexpected medical bill. Each of these can send you spiraling back into debt if you have no reserves. But when you begin to set aside even a small amount, you take the first step toward breathing room. Imagine saving just $200 a month. In 1 year, you would have $2,400. That amount might cover a car repair, a rent payment, or a medical bill. More importantly, it would cover your peace of mind. You no longer face each day with the same fragile anxiety. You stand a little taller because you know you have a cushion. Think of Clara, the advertising professional who once lived on the edge. When she realized her vulnerability, she made a decision. Before spending on restaurants or new clothes, she would build a reserve. At first, it was slow. $50 here, $100 there. But she stayed consistent, and after a year, she had $3,000 saved. The first time her car needed a repair costing $600, she felt something new, relief. She paid the bill without panic, without debt, without scrambling for solutions. That small moment transformed her outlook. She no longer saw herself as a victim of circumstances. She saw herself as someone in control. That is the power of an emergency fund. It shifts your identity from reactive to proactive. Another part of the foundation is eliminating toxic debt. Not all debt is equal. A low-interest mortgage that builds equity is one thing. A credit card charging 20% interest is another. When you carry high-interest debt, your money is enslaved. It works not for you but against you. Every dollar you earn is already spoken for before it reaches your hands. Breaking free requires cutting the chains of toxic debt. This does not happen overnight. But with each payment you make, you reclaim a piece of your freedom. Let us look at James, who owed $8,000 in credit card debt. with an interest rate of 19%. For years, he made only the minimum payments, which kept him trapped. When he finally faced the numbers, he saw that he was paying nearly $120 each month in interest alone. That awareness shocked him. He chose a new strategy. He cut unnecessary expenses, sold items he no longer used, and applied every spare dollar to the debt. In 2 years, he was free. The day he made his final payment, he described it as breathing for the first time in years. His paycheck, once devoured by interest, was his again. Debt had been a shackle. Paying it off was the key. A foundation also requires structure. Budgeting is not punishment. It is a blueprint for freedom. Many people resist the word budget because it feels restrictive, as if it means saying no to everything enjoyable. But a budget is not about restriction. It is about direction. Without a plan, your money drifts wherever impulse takes it. With a plan, your money follows your values. You decide in advance where it goes, ensuring that your priorities are funded before distractions steal your resources. Imagine a family who earns $5,000 a month. Without a budget, they spend impulsively, dining out, shopping, subscriptions, gadgets. Each month ends with surprise and regret. But with a budget, they decide together. $2,000 for rent, $500 for groceries, $400 for debt repayment, $300 for savings, and a set amount for entertainment. Suddenly, arguments fade because the plan speaks louder than emotion. The family does not feel deprived. They feel empowered. They know where their money is going and why. The budget becomes their map, guiding them toward the freedom they desire. Building a foundation of freedom also means redefining success. Instead of asking, "How much do I earn?" you begin to ask, "How much margin do I have?" If your expenses equal your income, you are still vulnerable no matter how large that income is. True freedom begins when you spend less than you earn and direct the difference towards savings and investment. That gap, the margin, is a seedbed of wealth. Without it, nothing grows. With it, everything becomes possible. There's a story of Anna and Peter, a couple with modest incomes. Together, they earned $4,000 a month. For years, they spent nearly all of it, believing they could never get ahead. But then, they made a simple commitment: to save 10% of everything they earned. At first, it was difficult. They cut cable, packed lunches, and resisted impulse purchases. But slowly, their savings grew. In 3 years, they had over $12,000 in reserves. That fund gave them choices they had never had before: the ability to move to a better neighborhood, the confidence to start a side business, the freedom to say no to overtime shifts. Their incomes had not doubled, but their freedom had. The foundation of freedom is not glamorous. It is not about luxury cars, exotic vacations, or status symbols. It is about safety, stability, and choice. It is about creating a life where one unexpected expense does not destroy you, where debt does not consume you, and where your money follows your values instead of your impulses. It is about building something solid beneath your feet, so that you can reach higher without fear of falling. When you live paycheck to paycheck, you stand on quicksand. Every step sinks you deeper. But when you build a foundation of freedom, you stand on rock. The storms may still come, but they do not destroy you. And with each dollar saved, each debt repaid, each plan created, you place another brick in that foundation. Freedom begins not with wealth, but with structure. And once the foundation is strong, you can begin to build the life you have always imagined. When you decide to build a foundation of freedom, you are really deciding to rebuild your relationship with money. For years, money may have been something that controlled you, a master whose presence or absence dictated your peace of mind. But as you lay each brick, savings, debt reduction, structure, you begin to flip that relationship. Money becomes a tool, a servant, a resource you guide rather than something that pushes you around. The difference lies not in how much you earn, but in how intentionally you direct what you already have. One of the most powerful habits in this transformation is automatic saving. Many people believe they will save whatever is left at the end of the month. But when you live paycheck to paycheck, nothing is ever left. Bills, cravings, and emergencies consume every dollar. The secret is to reverse the order. Save first, spend second. By automating even a small transfer into savings on payday, You protect your future before the present has a chance to devour it. 10% is ideal, but even 5% build momentum. Imagine saving $150 from a $3,000 paycheck. It feels small, but over a year that becomes $1,800. Over 5 years, without even considering growth, that is $9,000. With investment, it multiplies further. Automatic saving is not about the amount. It is about the discipline. Take the story of Natalie, a young teacher who earned $2,600 monthly. She always felt there was no room to save. But after reading about automatic transfers, she set up $50 to move directly into a savings account each payday. At first, she hardly noticed a difference, but after 6 months she had $300. After a year, $600. By the third year, she had nearly $2,000. That amount became the seed of her emergency fund, which later grew into an investment account. Natalie described the feeling as magical, but it was not magic. It was structure. It was a foundation of freedom built one brick at a time. Another crucial element is insurance. While many see insurance as a burden, in truth, it is protection for the foundation you are building. Without it, a single accident can erase years of progress. Health insurance, renters or homeowners insurance, and basic life coverage are not luxuries. They are safeguards. You may resent paying the premiums, but they buy something invaluable, the ability to recover. Without them, one hospital bill or house fire can collapse your financial stability entirely. Freedom requires not only offense, saving and investing, but also defense. Budgeting, as we saw earlier, is often misunderstood as restriction. In reality, it is liberation. When you sit down each month and decide where your money will go, you free yourself from the chaos of wondering where it went. You are no longer surprised at the end of the month because you gave every dollar a job. Some jobs are for survival, like rent and food. Some jobs are for security, like savings and debt repayment. And some jobs are for joy, like entertainment or hobbies. The balance matters less than the intention. A budget is not a cage. It is a compass. It tells you where you are headed and reminds you when you drift. Imagine Samuel, who earned $4,000 monthly. He dreaded the word budget because it reminded him of strict rules from childhood. But when he finally sat down to write one, he discovered something surprising. The budget gave him permission to spend. Instead of feeling guilty for going to movies, he enjoyed it fully because he had already planned for it. He no longer lived in fear of overspending because he knew exactly where his money was. That clarity was freedom. A budget did not chain him. It set him free. A foundation of freedom also means building multiple layers of margin. The first layer is the emergency fund, protecting you from crises. The second is debt freedom, removing the weight of interest. The third is ongoing savings, creating space for opportunity. And the fourth is investment, planting seeds for growth. Each layer strengthens the others. Without savings, you fall back into debt. Without budgeting, savings never accumulate. Without investment, your savings lose value to inflation. Freedom requires all layers working together, each one reinforcing the foundation. Consider Helena and Victor, a couple who decided to overhaul their finances. They started with a $1,000 emergency fund. Next, they focused on paying off $6,000 in credit card debt, which took them 18 months. After that, they built their savings to 3 months of expenses, around $9,000. Finally, they began investing in index funds, setting aside $500 a month. Within 5 years, their net worth had transformed. They were no longer worried about losing a paycheck. They were no longer vulnerable to small emergencies. They described the process as slow but steady, like stacking bricks into a wall. At first, it did not look like much, but with consistency, the wall grew tall and strong enough to protect them. The foundation also changes your mindset. You stop asking, "Can I afford this?" and start asking, "Does this align with my values?" You stop chasing the next purchase and start cherishing the stability you have created. The shift is subtle but profound. From consumer to builder, from spender to steward. That is the true foundation of freedom. The storms of life will still come. Jobs may end, cars may break, illnesses may arrive. But when you have built your foundation, those storms no longer destroy you. They shake you, yes, but they do not collapse you. You face them with calm rather than panic, with control rather than chaos. That is what freedom feels like. Not the absence of problems, but the presence of strength. The foundation is not glamorous. It does not earn applause. It does not make headlines. But it is the most important work you will ever do with your money. Because once it is in place, everything else, growth, opportunity, wealth, becomes possible. Without it, all else is fragile. With it, you are unshakable. Chapter 5, Turning Income into Wealth. There's a point where survival ends and building begins. Up until now, your energy has been devoted to escaping the paycheck-to-paycheck trap, patching leaks, facing the truth, and laying down a foundation strong enough to stand on. But freedom does not come from simply surviving the month without disaster. Freedom is born when your income becomes more than a temporary lifeline. It is born when you learn to turn income into wealth. Wealth is not a number in a bank account. It is a structure that continues to support you long after you stop working. It is the difference between chasing every dollar and having dollars chase you. The first key to turning income into wealth is recognizing that money must be put to work. For most people, money comes in, money goes out, and the cycle repeats endlessly. But wealth is created when some of that money is captured, planted, and left to grow. Just as seeds can grow into trees that bear fruit for generations, small portions of income, consistently invested, can transform into a forest of assets that sustain you for life. Without this shift, income is temporary. With it, income becomes the raw material of freedom. Consider the story of Isabella, a young woman who worked as a paralegal earning $3,800 each month. For years, she spent nearly all of it on rent, student loans, and lifestyle expenses. But when she finally decided to invest, she began by setting aside just $200 a month into a retirement account. It felt small, even laughable at first. Yet after 10 years, with growth averaging 7% annually, she looked at her account in awe. What had once felt like nothing had grown to more than $35,000. The number itself mattered less than the lesson. Consistent investing transformed income into wealth. Isabella realized she did not need to earn six figures to build a future. She only needed discipline and time. Wealth building requires understanding compounding. Compounding is a silent engine that multiplies your efforts. When you invest $1,000 at a return of 8%, you earn $80 the first year. In the second year, you earn not only on your original $1,000 but also on the $80, giving you more than $170 in growth. Over decades, this snowball becomes unstoppable. Albert Einstein once called compounding the eighth wonder of the world for a reason. It is the closest thing to magic in finance. Those who understand harness it. Those who ignore it pay it to others through interest. Another example is Thomas, a school custodian who earned a modest salary of $35,000 a year. He decided in his 20s to invest $200 every month into a low-cost index fund. He never stopped, not even when his friends mocked him for living cheap. By the time he retired in his 60s, his account had grown to more than $500,000. His income had never been extraordinary, but his consistency was. Thomas's story shows the truth. Wealth is not about how much you earn, but about how much you keep and grow. Turning income into wealth also means diversifying. Relying solely on a paycheck is fragile, as you have already seen. But once you free a portion of your income, you can direct it into multiple streams. Some may go into retirement accounts, some into real estate, some into side businesses. Each stream reduces your dependence on the others. If one dries up, the others still flow. This diversification creates resilience, a shield against the uncertainty of life. Think of Amanda and Carlos, who both worked traditional jobs earning around $4,000 each per month. They began investing in rental properties, starting with a small duplex purchase with saved reserves. Within a few years, the rental income covered the mortgage, and eventually, it provided additional cash flow of $600 monthly. That extra income was reinvested into a second property, then a third. By their mid-40s, Amanda and Carlos had created an income stream that continued even when they took time off work. Their paychecks were no longer their only source of survival. Their investments have become a new foundation. Wealth is not only about money saved and invested. It is also about mindset. You must see every dollar as an employee. Each one can either be wasted on short-term comfort or assigned to long-term work. If you spend $20 on takeout, that dollar works for one meal. If you invest $20, that dollar works for you forever, bringing back friends in the form of dividends, interest, and growth. When you change your perspective, you begin to ask, am I consuming my dollars or employing them? The danger many fall into is lifestyle inflation. As income rises, expenses rise just as quickly, sometimes faster. You receive a raise and immediately upgrade your car, your wardrobe, your vacations. The cycle continues, and despite earning more, you feel just as trapped. To build wealth, you must resist this temptation. Let your income grow while keeping your lifestyle steady. Direct the difference into wealth-building vehicles, not fleeting pleasures. The temporary satisfaction of a new gadget cannot compare to the lasting security of financial independence. A famous study once examined two groups, one that saved 10% of their income from their 20s onward, and another that waited until their 40s to begin saving 20%. Despite saving double the amount each month, the second group never caught up to the first. Time had worked its magic for the disciplined savers. This is the unshakable law of wealth. Start early, stay consistent. Let compounding do its work. The sooner you employ your dollars, the sooner they begin multiplying. Wealth is also about protecting what you build. Once you invest, you must guard against unnecessary risks. High-interest debt, speculative investments, and reckless spending are threats to the foundation. Building wealth is not about gambling on sudden gains. It is about steady, patient growth. The tortoise, not the hare, wins this race. Turning income into wealth is not a dream reserved for the wealthy. It is a choice available to anyone who decides to direct their income with intention. It requires discipline, patience, and the courage to say no to short-term indulgence for long-term freedom. But once you see your income transforming into something that grows beyond your labor, you realize the truth. Your paycheck was never meant to be the end. It was meant to be the beginning. Wealth is not built by accident. It is engineered through intention, habit, and a willingness to delay gratification. Yet most people never make the shift from income to wealth because they treat every paycheck as something to be consumed. They see money only as a ticket to survival or comfort, not as a tool to create independence. The turning point comes when you decide that part of your income will no longer be spent. It will be transformed. It will become capital, fuel for growth, the seed of a future where money works harder than you do. One of the most overlooked methods of turning income into wealth is education. Not just formal education, but financial education. The kind you rarely receive in school. Learning about investments, interest, taxes, and assets can multiply the value of your income far beyond its face amount. Consider Daniel, who earned $40,000 a year as an entry-level technician. At first, he believed investing was too complicated, but he dedicated 1 hour a week to reading about personal finance and practicing with a mock portfolio. Within 2 years, he felt confident enough to begin. By his mid-30s, he had built a portfolio worth more than $100,000. His income had not changed dramatically, but his knowledge had transformed what he did with it. Education turned his income into wealth. Another crucial strategy is leveraging retirement accounts and tax-advantaged vehicles. Many people ignore employer-matching programs, essentially leaving free money on the table. Imagine earning $50,000 a year with an employer offering a 5% match on retirement contributions. If you contribute $2,500 annually, your employer adds another $2,500. That is $5,000 invested each year, compounding for decades. Over 30 years at an average return of 7%, that grows to more than $500,000. The paycheck itself did not increase, but awareness and discipline transformed it into wealth. Real estate has also been a powerful vehicle for wealth building, not because of glamour or speculation, but because of stability and leverage. Take the story of Patricia, a nurse who bought a modest duplex in her 30s. She lived in one unit and rented out the other, using the rental income to cover most of her mortgage. Over 20 years, the property doubled in value, and the tenants had effectively paid off her loan. When she sold it, she walked away with $200,000 in equity. That single decision, made with courage and foresight, turned her modest paycheck into a stepping stone toward independence. Side businesses are another bridge between income and wealth. Many dismiss side hustles as exhausting, but when built strategically, they become engines of freedom. Think of Mark, an accountant who began selling handmade furniture online. At first, it was slow, generating only a few $100s a month, but he reinvested profits into better tools and marketing. Within 5 years, his side business generated nearly as much as his full-time job. More importantly, the business itself became an asset that could grow and even be sold. His paycheck was no longer his only source of survival. His creativity had been converted into wealth. The key principle is that every dollar you earn can either die or multiply. When you spend, it dies. It serves you once and disappears. When you invest it, it multiplies. It continues to serve you, bringing back more dollars year after year. If you earn $3,000 in a month and spend it all, the money is gone forever. But if you invest even $300 over decades, that $300 can grow into thousands. The choice is simple, though not easy. Consume or cultivate. Wealth building also requires patience. The culture of instant gratification urges you to buy now, upgrade now, enjoy now. But true wealth is quiet and slow. It is the accumulation of consistent choices that may seem invisible in the moment. You may feel like your efforts are too small to matter, but time multiplies small actions into massive results. The tree that shades you today began as a seed decades ago. Your wealth will grow the same way. Think about James and Eleanor, who both worked average jobs in the Postal Service. For 40 years, they lived below their means, investing modestly in retirement accounts and avoiding lifestyle inflation. They never drove flashy cars or lived in luxury. To their neighbors, they seemed ordinary, even boring. But when they retired, they revealed a portfolio worth more than $1 million. Their secret was no secret at all. Discipline, patience, and a refusal to let income slip through their fingers without being put to work. They turned ordinary paychecks into extraordinary freedom. Of course, building wealth also requires protection. As your investments grow, you must guard against unnecessary risks. Scams, reckless speculation, or emotional decisions made in fear or greed. Wealth is fragile if treated carelessly. It is built slowly but can be lost quickly. This is why long-term planning, diversification, and self-control are essential. You must remember that the goal is not to win a sprint, but to endure a marathon. Turning income into wealth is ultimately about rewriting your story. Instead of saying, "I work for money," you begin to say, "My money works for me." Instead of living for payday, you begin to build for tomorrow. The numbers may be modest at first, but the direction matters more than the speed. Once you take the first steps, momentum builds, and every dollar invested becomes a partner in your journey. The paycheck was never meant to keep you trapped in survival. It was meant to be a tool, a starting point, a resource to be multiplied. When you stop seeing income as something to be consumed and start seeing it as capital to be grown, you step onto the path of true wealth. That is a turning point where survival ends and freedom begins. Chapter 6, Living Beyond the Cycle. There comes a day when you wake up and realize that the weight that once pressed on your chest is gone. The anxiety that used to keep you awake at night has softened into quiet confidence. Bills no longer feel like enemies. They are simply tasks to be managed. Emergencies no longer feel like disasters. They are inconveniences you are prepared for. This is what it means to live beyond the cycle. It is not about being a billionaire or flashing wealth for others to admire. It is about having control, peace, and choices. It is about building a life where money no longer dictates your emotions, your relationships, or your future. Living beyond the cycle begins with the understanding that money is not the goal. For years, money consumed your thoughts because it was scarce. It was a measure of safety, the fuel of survival, the one thing you could not stop thinking about. But once you have broken the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle, money becomes a background player. You respect it, you manage it, but it no longer rules you. Freedom is not measured by the size of your account. It is measured by how little your well-being depends on the next paycheck. Take the story of Helena, a social worker who spent most of her 20s trapped in the cycle. She lived in fear of every bill, every unexpected cost, every small disruption. But she committed to building her foundation, saving, investing, and steadily paying down debt. By her late 30s, she had 6 months of expenses saved, a retirement account growing quietly, and no consumer debt. When her employer went through layoffs, Helena was affected. A decade earlier, this would have destroyed her. But now she had choices. She took 3 months off, traveled to visit family, and returned to the job market when she was ready. Living beyond the cycle gave her something priceless: control over her time. Another aspect of life beyond the cycle is generosity. When you are trapped in survival, giving feels impossible. Every dollar seems too precious. Every call is too costly. But once you have created margin, you can give without fear. And generosity changes not only those who receive, but also those who give. Consider Mark and Angela, who once struggled with credit card debt. After building stability, they committed to donating 10% of their income to local charities and helping family members in need. Instead of feeling poorer, they felt richer. Generosity gave meaning to their money, turning it from a mere tool of survival into an instrument of impact. Living beyond the cycle also allows you to invest in experiences rather than just things. When you're struggling, you often spend on cheap pleasures to escape stress: fast food, impulse shopping, entertainment subscriptions. But beyond the cycle, you begin to invest in memories, traveling with loved ones, learning new skills, spending time on passions that bring joy. These experiences enrich your life in ways no possession ever can. Freedom is not about how many things you own. It is about how deeply you live. Health improves when you live beyond the cycle. Stress is one of the most destructive forces in the body, fueling illness, fatigue, and mental strain. Financial stress, in particular, is relentless. When it fades, your body feels the difference. You sleep better. You think clearer. You have the energy to focus on goals beyond mere survival. Research shows that financial stability is directly tied to longer life expectancy and greater mental health. When you escape the paycheck prison, you do not just gain wealth, you gain years of life. Think of Joseph, who once lived under crushing credit card debt, barely making minimum payments. He often skipped medical appointments, delayed dental care, and lived with chronic anxiety. After years of disciplined saving and debt elimination, he finally reached stability. With an emergency fund in place, he scheduled long-postponed checkups, joined a local gym, and began cooking healthy meals. Within a year, he felt younger, stronger, and more hopeful than he had in decades. His financial freedom had become physical freedom. Living beyond the cycle also transforms relationships. Money is one of the leading causes of stress in marriages and families. When bills dominate every conversation, love and trust suffer. But when stability arrives, couples can dream together rather than argue. Parents can teach children about growth rather than scarcity. Friends can gather without the quiet shame of someone who cannot afford to participate. Freedom spreads beyond your wallet into your connections with others. Consider Emma and David, who once fought constantly about money. Every purchase was a battle, every decision a conflict. But after years of building their foundation and creating margin, they began to use money as a tool for unity rather than division. They set joint goals, like saving for a home and planning vacations. Instead of fighting, they celebrated each milestone together. Their marriage grew stronger, not because money was abundant, but because the fear around it had vanished. Living beyond the cycle also gives you the freedom to pursue purpose. When survival no longer consumes your energy, you can focus on what matters most. You can explore work that inspires you, projects that fulfill you, and contributions that leave a legacy. Perhaps you choose to start a business, write a book, volunteer, or mentor others. Beyond the cycle, money no longer traps you in a job you hate or a life that feels empty. It becomes a support that allows you to chase meaning. Freedom beyond the cycle is not perfect. Challenges still arise, markets still fluctuate, and life still surprises you. But the difference is that you are no longer powerless. You face challenges with resilience rather than fear. You meet surprises with preparation rather than panic. You stand tall because your life is no longer balanced on the edge of the next paycheck. Living beyond the cycle is not about becoming rich in the eyes of others. It is about becoming free in your own. It is about building a life where money is no longer your master but your servant, where time is no longer stolen by survival but invested in living. It is about stepping into a future where every decision is guided by values, not desperation. And once you taste this freedom, you know the truth. No paycheck, no possession, no fleeting pleasure compares to the peace of a life lived in control. To live beyond the cycle is to experience money in its proper place. It is no longer a constant source of anxiety, nor is it an idol to be worshipped. It becomes what was always meant to be, a tool neutral and obedient, ready to serve you when commanded. You do not fear payday anymore, nor do you count the days until the next deposit with dread. Instead, you use your resources to create the life you desire. That life is not built on luck, but on discipline, clarity, and the steady work of transformation that brought you here. One of the greatest markers of life beyond the paycheck-to-paycheck trap is choice. Choice is the truest measure of wealth. When you have no margin, you have no choice. You take the job you dislike. You buy the cheapest option regardless of quality. You borrow even when you know it is dangerous. But with margin, you choose. You choose work that inspires you, housing that uplifts you, food that nourishes you. You choose when to rest, when to travel, when to take risks. Choice is freedom, and freedom is the essence of wealth. Consider Elena, who once worked 2 jobs to keep up with bills. For years, exhaustion was her normal state, but as she built her reserves and investments, she gained options. Eventually, she left the second job, then later transitioned from her stressful full-time role into part-time consulting. She earned less at first, but she lived more. She had time for her children, energy for her health, and space to pursue creative projects. The paycheck no longer dictated her life. She dictated her life with the paycheck as one of many tools. Living beyond the cycle also means becoming intentional about legacy. Legacy is not only about money passed on after death. It is about the impact you create during life. When you are no longer consumed by bills, you can think about what you want your resources to achieve. You might fund education for your children, start a scholarship in your community, support causes that align with your values. Legacy is the outward expression of freedom. It says, "My money is not only for me, it is for the world I leave behind." Take Jonathan, who grew up in poverty and swore he would break the cycle for his family. After years of discipline, he built a stable financial base, invested wisely, and created passive income streams. But he did not stop there. He began mentoring young people in his neighborhood, teaching them about budgeting, saving, and investing. He even started a small community fund to help families cover emergencies without falling into predatory debt traps. His legacy was not just measured in dollars, but in lives changed. Freedom had given him the ability to lift others out of the same cycle he once endured. Another dimension of life beyond the cycle is joy. Joy that comes from using money to enrich life rather than patch holes. For the first time, vacations are not funded by credit cards, but by savings. Holidays are not stressful but fulfilling, because gifts are planned rather than squeezed from thin air. Even daily living becomes more joyful. You savor meals, experiences, and time because they are not laced with guilt. You can say yes to opportunities without hesitation, not because you are reckless, but because you are prepared. Imagine Teresa, who spent her 20s drowning in debt. By her 40s, she had built stability and margin. One year, she decided to take her parents on a trip they had always dreamed of but never afforded. She paid for the flights, the hotel, the meals, all in cash saved intentionally. The joy on their faces was worth more than any possession. That moment represented not only a financial milestone, but a personal victory. Money had become a means to create memories, to express love, to celebrate life. Living beyond the cycle also means resilience in the face of uncertainty. Markets rise and fall, economies shift, and personal challenges always come. But when you have reserves, investments, and diversified income streams, you are not crushed by these changes. You bend but do not break. You adjust rather than collapse. The storms that once would have destroyed you now test your strength and prove your preparation. This resilience is the ultimate reward of the work you have done. There is also the freedom to dream again. When you are stuck in survival, dreams feel like luxuries you cannot afford. You silence them because you are too busy counting pennies. But when the cycle ends, your imagination awakens. You begin to ask, what do I truly want from life? What passions have I ignored? What possibilities excite me? Dreams return when scarcity no longer smothers them. And with margin, you have the resources to chase them. Finally, living beyond the cycle is about peace. Not perfection, not endless wealth, not the absence of problems, but peace. Peace when bills arrive, peace when emergencies strike, peace when you think of the future. This peace is not bought, it is built. It is built on every sacrifice you made, every choice to save rather than spend, every step of discipline that carried you here. It is the peace of knowing you are no longer a prisoner of the paycheck. When you live beyond the cycle, you embody freedom in its simplest form. You no longer measure your life by the days between paydays. You measure it by the richness of your choices, the depth of your relationships, the clarity of your values. You finally understand what money was always meant to be. Not your master, not your fear, but your servant. And in that moment, you realize you've broken the cycle forever.